All
Great.
right. First of all, I just wanted to apologize to everyone that suffered through this long screening. So yes, and I wanted to say thank you, Ali, for going through this screening anyway. So just for you to understand everything what's happening is that this screening was the second one of a long series of screenings that will happen in April. So we are a bit early, the solution that crashed. So I'm sorry, those that saw their film stop at 42 minutes. It's just that that was the first time we used this platform that I just set up last week. So the next screenings will happen in April, and everything will be ready. Everything will be very stable, and most of all, the quality will be very high quality, so we can all watch the film in peace without any interruption. Thank you, Ali, for anyway doing that. I really appreciate your commitment.
Yes, and thanks everyone for coming. We'll find ways for those. I know some people had quite a bit, they missed pieces of the film, and just rest assured that there will be more screenings, and we'll find a way to make sure everyone can watch it. Carolyn, I think the gallery view is that you can change that in the top right of your screen to see everybody. So I think we can have questions in the regular chat instead of the Q&A chat. If people want to just put questions into there, I think that would be great. And that way we can all just be on the same place. And to get us started, while other people are sharing questions, Casey, I would love to learn more about the work that you're doing with the rights of nature, visiting different communities around the world. And I've been very inspired by the news of it that I've heard, but I know that there must be a lot going on. So I'd love to hear more about that work. That's one of the things we're raising some money to support, is your work around the rights of nature. So could you share some information about that?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing. And thank you, relatives, for being here so we can all share this, this time in cyberspace. It's an interesting thing to me. I know I kind of wonder a bit, but our people came from the Star Nation. That's my understanding. So when Mikasi gave us the star quilt when he was bringing his newest son to meet us, this behind me means a lot, because we are in a phase of being where we humans are sharing our understanding of our relationship with all, rather than it just being the indigenous people of the world who still have that grounding within our mother's teaching, within our father's sky's breath. And so rights of nature, I saw it and beautifully said, and so I'm going to repeat and kind of claim it a bit, is that, you know, we're recognizing that we're not protecting nature. We are nature protecting itself. So when we use words like rights of nature, we're simply recognizing a sacred system of life that Wakanda put in place at the beginning, when there was life that came, and it was in whatever form it was and morphed into what is today. Then we all expanded ourselves into living beings that are interrelated. So within the Ponca understanding, we recognize this movement that was already in place within the environmental world, with I think the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, and for me being directly introduced to it by Shannon Biggs, who's now with Movement Rights and Penny Opal Plant, creating Movement Rights as a way to expand this knowledge. For me personally, when we began to explore the idea of bringing it into not only our statutes or our laws, because we have our own courts, our own constitution. It was to recognize what always has been and to try to put it in a manner that allowed us to legally protect all that is, including the human, because we here in the victims of the extractive industry's genocidal process. So we wanted to be able to grow our food, to drink the water, to be able to breathe the air. And we're suffering. We're suffering here, as happens in many indigenous communities, including my young relative, Bryan's community. We were down there with him, granddaughter Casey and I. By recognizing the rights of nature in a legal way, according to human law, we are also being able to find ways that we can try to stop KXL. You know, my oldest son, Mikasi, planted our sacred corn in a cornfield up there in Nebraska, on Art and Helen Tanderup's ranch, which was formerly Ponca land before we were forcibly removed. In doing so, they registered that as sacred Ponca corn in the Department of Agriculture, and it became a sacred site. And it is another form of recognizing the rights of nature, the rights of all things to live. So we are in the process. We had a iron forum and intertribal rights of nature forum in Ponca territory twice now, as well as the Frontline Oil and Gas conference that happened here. And in every one of those situations, indigenous people, as well as all the other allies, immediately recognized the value as perhaps using this as a tool in their own neighborhoods, like in Lake Erie. The citizens there are looking at creating personhood for Lake Erie in order to protect not only the sacred water, but themselves and all of their relatives in whatever living form. And of course, in Ecuador, that's within their constitution. In New Zealand, there's a different form, but it's very similar, where they're recognizing personhood of the Wanganui River. So about 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting here in Tulsa about next steps. What are we going to do? Perhaps we're going to exercise this. There were 5 lawyers there, as well as movement rights and myself, discussing maybe this is a tool to stop KXL from coming through the sacred Ogallala Aquifer in Nebraska. Maybe it's a tool to stop them from continuing to pollute us here. Maybe we're going to recognize Nisga'a, Nijide, the Arkansas or the Salt Fork River, and their personhood here, just as corporations in the United States have personhood. And those tools are going to enable us to be able as humans to have some honor within all living things.
Thank you, Casey. One of the questions was to ask for more information about the Rights of Nature event that happened in the film. It was at the Paris talks in 2015. What was the, what was that about? What was signed there, and how that has evolved over time?
One form that we have been using that we may use here in Ponca country is a tribunal. And it is, I suppose, would be almost a theater piece with real facts and real witnesses and judges and prosecutors and defense attorneys that will take the extractive industry to court and bring all the facts forth through witnessing what those facts are, and lay them out. And then this is given to a judge. And this is, I suppose, one way of being able to prepare ourselves to be able to say, this is how the Indigenous viewpoint is. This is also the facts of what's going on in our territory. And we're going to lay them out for everyone to be able to see. And let's say that we accidentally had some fair jurisdiction or jurisprudence in our own territory with a true judge appointed by, of course, the federal and state people that are opposing us and supporting the extractive industry. But let's say that this was really something that we could bring to court. These are the facts that we would bring, and we would expect a fair judgment of what you're seeing. And so these tribunals have happened around in South America, I believe at the UN in Germany, am I correct in that? And then as well as in the United States. And I don't believe that there's one in Indigenous territory in the United States yet. So that's something we're looking at doing. And perhaps this venue that we're using now might be a good venue to be able to bring that idea to people. I have two ideas about this. One is getting the facts together and getting the witnesses together, and to have an audience that then understands this will be a way of allowing my community to have a voice and the communities around me. It will be a way for those communities to be empowered by learning from each other about what our issues are. But my understanding is much like in the Bible, and I don't follow the Christian way, but I do understand it, and I do see the parallels for the Indigenous peoples in some ways. As it is above, so is it below, maybe is the way that goes. But my understanding from the spirituality that I understand is very similar. There was a quote by Crazy Horse, who was an incredible medicine embodied here. And he said that this is the shadow world that we humans walk. Shakespeare said it too, come to think of it. And that the real world is the next world, the one when you go beyond the veil into the next world. So I understand when we do these tribunals that it lives in that other world as well, and will eventually become form here on earth. We are in a time of prophecy. We are in a time of purification and transition. And so as we set up these tribunals, that's in my mind and heart and spirit and understanding.
Thank you, Casey. We have some questions about the status of pipelines in the chat. I think people are interested in the Standing Rock win in court yesterday, where the Dakota Access Pipeline, but also the Keystone XL pipeline. And there's also a comment in there about the recent approval of the Jordan Cove pipeline in Oregon, where they're trying to take that oil and gas to the coast for shipping out of Coos Bay. And so this is kind of for any and all of you to comment on what's your perspective on the status of these pipelines, and on what's your advice for people trying to resist the continued expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure.
Well, if the guys aren't going to talk, there's no problem with me going ahead, right, guys? I may give you a moment pretty soon, but just hang on. There's many things to be said about this. I'm going to read something to you in a minute from Dave Archambault, who is the chief or the leader of the Standing Rock Lakota during that period of time of Standing Rock. When that happened. But first we need to recognize many things. The pipelines are a symptom, and they are a product of a larger picture. There is the tar sands that's happening up there in our relatives' territory. And we need to understand what the source is more than anything else. We need to stop everything at the source. And we also need to be pipeline fighters. And we also need to be refinery fighters. And we also, and maybe fighters aren't the best word. Maybe we're land, water, and air protectors. But these things are symptoms of a larger illness that has to be addressed. And during this time that there's an illness of humans, notice the healing of the Mother Earth and the Father Sky that's going on. And understand that those things that are creating this systematic problems are us. And that we humans need to take charge of what we deem a way of life. Bryan.
Hey y'all.
Speak up, dude.
I'm in my car because I don't have internet at my house, and I only have internet at the office, so bear with me. But thank you for all those beautiful words, Casey. I always enjoy listening to your perspective and way of thinking about the situation. You know, in terms of the pipeline fights, all I can say is just keep at it, and never give up, and continue to build. You know, with your relatives, and that means everyone, and not just people either. That means, you know, all of the life that exists around your home. The animals, the plants, the water bodies. You know, it's important to be mindful of all life, and that we're all in relation to each other and depend on each other, whether we know it or not. And I know a lot of folks focus on the legal fights, but that's just one of many. And the most important one that I think is the hardest to stay connected to is the spiritual fight and battle. And, you know, part of that is personal, and part of that is cultural, but just having time. You know, like right now, many of us are being forced to stay at home for a week or two or three. And an elder and friend here in the city told me that, you know, they did us a favor because they gave us time to connect with spirit. And I know a lot of us are spending this time being scared and fearful or angry and upset. But I would encourage you to take that time to connect with spirit, and follow the advice of a good friend and elder here in the community. And it may sound cliche, and it may seem like, you know, it doesn't carry a whole lot of meaning or weight. But if you've ever truly connected with spirit, then I think you understand what I'm saying. It's a powerful, very powerful way of being, and it supersedes, you know, any other issues that may be going on in your life. You know, including the pipeline fights, including your mortgage. You know, all those things. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, partly because of what's going on, but also you know, thinking really hard on how to embrace and embody the condor and the eagle um, as best I can. And it's hard. It's not an easy task. But I would encourage everyone, you know, to really think hard about connecting with spirit and protecting it right now.
Thank you, Bryan.
Thank you. So many
Thank you,
things
Casey.
are, yeah, it's really remarkable to listen, Bryan, because you're the next generation, and then of course listening to grandchildren and stuff. But simple things occur all the time. Sitting here looking out my window, and you see the natural world is continuing regardless of this COVID-19. You see that the birds are still singing and calling, and it's spring. You see the leaves coming out on the trees and the Thunder Nation coming over. You see the clouds gathering. You know, all this beauty is happening. Yesterday I was sitting outside, and about maybe 7 to 9 eagles were going over, and just on a jet stream. They were moving so quickly to the north. I'm home. I'm seeing that, and I'm understanding that, you know, as we humans have to slow down and sit for a bit, the natural world continues, and we are part of that. It's a miraculous place to be right now. So the pipelines are an issue, and we will continue to deal with it. But I do want to emphasize to all the non-Indigenous people out there, it's yours too. You have to pay attention to this too. More of us are being in gardens. More of us are taking deep breaths for meditation. Where does that breath come from? Where do those rooted nations live naturally that we're putting in our gardens and now not having to drive to a supermarket for a mass-produced GMO thing? Where are these natural things that we are part of that give us life being honored? We've got to pay attention, you know, that water ceremony that we did, the breaths that we have, the warmth of the Father, Son. These are the things we take for granted. Would you like me to read Dave's reply? Dave Archambault, when I congratulated him, said thank you. He said this, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing with you. He said the judge has yet to rule if they will halt the flow while the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement, is being done, and both sides will have a chance to argue. The price of oil today is below $30 a barrel, which halted oil production, and that's good. And not only that, but COVID-19 has sent all oil rig workers in North Dakota home. It will be interesting to see what happens when the pipeline and the expansion request of 1 million barrels per day happens. My issue is that the judge had all of this information in front of him 2 years ago, but yet he allowed for the project to move forward and the construction to be completed. Our intention for the environmental impact statement ask from the very beginning was a strategy of slow construction to a halt, to dry up the finances and kill the snake. Because of the black snake is the pipeline. Because the construction is complete, the threat will always be there. An environmental impact statement can happen, and oil may flow in the future. The other issue I have is the tribe, the Standing Rock Sioux, Lakota, don't have the resources to contribute to the EIS, and it will be done by the government, and we all know their relationship with us. and the company. It won't be done fair.
Clement, I have the questions in the chat about, I think people are still looking for more information about how they can share this film with other people. What should they do, you know, in terms of sharing any of the links to preview it, or like, yeah, what information can you give folks about how they can promote the viewing of the film to other people?
All right, I was so comfortable listening to those amazing words, and I was very happy to be on mute mode in this virtual world, as Casey calls it. Yes, Casey, thank you for your words, and Bryan, thank you as well. Yeah, you know, I don't have many very good answers for you at the moment, because I am trying to, I think like many of us, with this amazing situation, you know, that brought forward COVID-19. It's a strange word to call him COVID-19. You know, we are trying to just take a step back and see how we can reassess the way we do work, and mostly maybe reassess the way we are together. So, you know, right now, I just realized that the past 3 months had been just a crazy moment. I thought that working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week was a good idea. and now I just realized that thanks to this situation, I can now spend more time with my family and take a step back and say, all right, so maybe we can find new ways to bring the film to audiences, maybe not physically, maybe not in movie theaters, but online, so virtually. So I know that that's been a very painful experience today, but we are not gonna stay on Zoom. And we are planning many online screenings from April on the occasion of Earth Day all the way to June, I suppose. On June 22nd, there is the World Rainforest Day. And that would be a good way, again, to emphasize the importance of bringing together the global North and the global South. Very often, you know, we hear folks from the North speaking on behalf of people from the South, and we are trying to change that with the film, and hopefully we can change that as well with those online screenings. You know, when we are just hitting the road and do a physical tour of the film, we rarely have those amazing people like Casey, Bryan, and others, and Ali, you know, like in the screening. You know, we can have like once in a while have maybe the filmmaker or one of the film protagonists in the movie theater, but I think it's an amazing opportunity as well to have those kind of online screenings, because in many, you know, we are all stuck at home, so we can always, you know, hop on, you know, on the computer. We are all anyway in front of our computers, most of us. And we have this opportunity to build relationship rapport and somehow extend, you know, the reach of our alliances through those kinds of events, you know. And we don't take a plane, we don't pollute some more, and we can actually, you know, like have good communication as well through those meetings. So just to be pragmatic and to answer your question, we have been working the past weeks on creating an online platform that combines together the possibility to live stream privately the film in high quality. So Zoom is really poor quality in comparison, and a chat room and a conferencing functionality. So we are going through our partners. It can be the UUs, Unitarian Universalists. It can be other interfaith partners. It can be in 350.org. It can be other environmental, youth groups and indigenous groups. Sorry, my kid is crying in the background. I don't know what my wife did to this kid, but she seems upset. So anyway.
I thought that was Bryan.
No, Bryan. Do you hide the kid in your car, Bryan? So the only thing is that so we are not trying to put our film yet as on demand. On demand means pay a fee, watch the film, go back home, and fix yourself pastas. We don't want that. We are still thinking that this film can be very powerful as an organizing tool, which means that even online screenings can be reframed around an impact campaign with a vision of how can we empower local and specific communities using this film as a platform to discuss, like right now, and as well as a way to raise funds for specific pressing and urgent issues. So that's why for each coming screening, we will open a private crowdfunding page addressing specific issues. So, and we are totally open to how it can look like. So for instance, right now, we adapted ourselves. We knew that there was this terrible situation happening with a huge flooding in Ecuador. And the community of Sarajevo, for instance, was flooded. The destruction is pretty large. And we are using this screening and the funds we can raise in order to support their community and the amazing work they do. So hopefully our partners will be happy to follow through and follow the call from Ali. Thank you, Ali, for showing the way. And we can, you know, like maybe every day, every second day, organize a different online screening and raise specific funds for specific issues. So we could imagine having like a screening, bringing together pipeline fighters. We can imagine having a screening about interfaith communities coming together, etc., etc. So, you know, we can always, so I don't want Rick to have, I think it's your name, Rick, to share the streaming links of our film. Thank you for doing it. But the fact is, right now, we are just trying to use this platform as an amazing way to keep engaging communities despite this crazy situation where everybody is locked up, not knowing what to do or how to come together. And we have the solution. Does it answer your question? I mean, it's all new. It's just so we had all those plans canceled last week. So I'm just trying to, like you all, navigate through this mess.
Yeah, and then there was a question: how do we, make this accessible to people who don't have good internet access? And I think what we can say to that is that soon we'll be able to meet in person again, and then we can do in-person screenings again. So this is really just trying to adapt to this pandemic and the shelter-in-place reality that the world is in right now. And then, once we're able to safely gather in person, we'll continue to start scheduling screenings at congregations and theaters with community partners again. And so I've put the link down in the chat for anyone who wants to donate. And how can I get copies of links participants shared? I would open them and bookmark them. I can also try to, in the bottom of a follow-up email, share what people are amplifying in the chat. One thing that's come up in the chat a few times as well is how to support the work of awareness raising and stopping the occurrence of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And Casey, would you speak on that? How people can learn more and how people can support and put pressure on the right people?
Such a big question and really complex, because each territory, each neighborhood probably would have a different answer. as was mentioned earlier, you know, we can't talk for our relatives in South America, and we can't talk for the relatives in North Dakota or Mexico or Canada, but each one of us, and Africa, and on, each one of us have stories within our territories of different issues, different reasons.
Casey, we've lost you. Oh, there you are.
Back.
You may have to turn your
Yes.
camera off, Casey.
Good trick. Tell me if you guys can hear me, because I'm not good at this.
That's better. Can hear you.
You can hear me? Oh, how interesting, because I did nothing. So this is a new world. By the way, I should have internet here on the 31st, so it's going to be another new world.
I think we lost you again.
I think tell me if I'm back.
I think the oil companies don't want you to answer this question, Casey.
Error. Just have to let me know if I'm back here.
It's okay now.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
This is a very funny world. No wonder I don't live in cyberspace. So where I live, there's not man camps as there is in North Dakota for when the fracking boom hit up there, but there are similar situations where there are trailer parks, camper parks, cheap hotels, and when a pipeline is coming through or some big construction around ConocoPhillips or Phillips 66, then a whole bunch of strangers come into town and have temporary jobs for the oil company. What they bring with them is a hunger for women, usually a load of dope, most often meth, often a pocket full of money, and they go to the bars around here and they pick up our women. And oftentimes our women don't live there. They introduce drugs into our communities, and they introduce their ugly ways. And then they get up and leave home. And sometimes they take our young men, our young women with them. We never see them again. Sometimes we hear about things that have happened, but this is not an unusual occurrence, and it has been happening since Columbus set his foot in our territory. And from the time that the papal bull edict came out, that we were less than human and they had the right to take and do anything they want to. We came originally from oftentimes a very matriarchal society where our women have been empowered naturally through the balance of the universe for male and female energy. That was not looked on kindly when that doctrine of discovery came into our territories, allowed these people to come and try to subdue the indigenous people. They didn't like to see women as less, like their women were treated like property. They wanted to treat us that way. So we ended up in these pitched battles for life for 500 years from that type of behavior. Missing and murdered indigenous women, men, children, and people are going on today, right now, in our communities along those medicine lines they call borders when they try to stop our people from going back and forth. It's an ongoing thing. And what you can do is just use your internet, use this cyberspace thing and look up MMIW, MMIP communities that are set up around the world. Do like you do with every other social service. Contribute. Give them, if you can, contribute money, contribute time and awareness to what the statistics are in your area. Lift a voice, tell your government, put the right people into government to make a difference for all of us.
Casey, we also have a question from Heidi in the chat, who says, I've been devoted to the rights of nature for decades, so this cultural exploration and interconnectedness in this important film touches my heart so deeply. How can companies get away with manipulating local and national policies and laws so that these, especially diverse and indigenous peoples who are actually living at the source of the energy extraction, are not considered in the decision-making process of approving a project? Many people are suffering genocide and ecological ethnic cleansing because they haven't been considered in the decision-making process of approving a project. So how can we make tangible changes so that these people are protected and included? Is there a way to establish laws, or is that folly when the companies and nations don't honor our earth treaties? Thank you. And how can we continue to stay in touch with all of your awe-inspiring endeavors? I bow down in gratitude to all of you.
Thank you, Heidi. And thank you for all that you are doing. You know, again, these are complex issues that you bring up. We just talked about the doctrine of discovery that allowed another government and other peoples to come into the territory. And I can only speak again from my perspective of where I am and what I've seen. Gives me a moment to think. Am I back with you all?
Yes, you're back.
Okay. So when one looks at this process from my perspective, for my people, it began, I can tell you probably 150 years ago, directly when the trappers were coming along Nishu, or the Missouri River, and my people were living there, and they discovered us, which is really funny to me. But they imposed then their own belief system on a system I guess that the object is we can pay attention to who we put in office. You know, if the orange guy wasn't in there, then KXL and Apple would not have been going through. You know, so who is it in this on Turtle Island or the United States that is putting this type of mentality in place? That's what has to change. And also you can support us in our sovereignty, because if we can enact the rights of nature, if we can protect the sovereignty of the territories we presently, by we, I'm saying a large we of 500 nations, then we're going to protect you well. That takes people, the neighbors, relatives around us, if there is help. So we need to look at our perhaps than the
Thank you, Casey.
and my back with you all.
It's been pretty spotty. So I think we'll, hopefully the bandwidth will improve.
What did you say?
I said
The
we had,
bandwidth.
yeah, we're having trouble hearing you. It's a bit choppy, but it was clear when you said one way people can support is by respecting the sovereignty of the tribes. And then we lost you a bit. Can you hear me, Casey?
Feels like this conversation needs to continue at a time where to actually make a long sentence without it being broken up. So maybe we need to continue this the next time.
Yes, I can try again later. Okay. We did have one comment about how do we stop feeding the financial system that backs these extraction companies. That was a question from Gary. Clement and Bryan, if you want to share anything about that. The film is building relationships with a coalition called the Stop the Money Pipeline Coalition, which will be doing bank divestment messages all on the day after Earth Day on the 23rd and the 24th. So you can keep an eye out for that if you haven't heard of it, the Stop the Money Pipeline Coalition. And again, this film is a tool to educate and inspire and bring people into this movement. There was one comment about feeling like things are plateaued and we don't have the energy we need. And I hope that that people can feel the power of this work that Casey is doing and Bryan is doing, and many of you who are here on the call are doing together. So please don't lose hope, and please feel the warmth of this this movement holding you and being here together. Bryan and Clement and Casey, do you have any final words before we hop off the call today?
Bryan, are you still here?
Yes.
Hello.
Still here. Hey, y'all. Yeah, again, thank you for joining us. And I know it's not easy, and we all have different ways of connecting right now, whether it's at home, on our phones, or whatnot. But I would encourage everyone just to, take a moment to put all of that aside. And, even if it's just for one day, maybe this weekend, and reconnect, reprioritize what's important to you, and the rest will continue. This quarantine and this virus will be behind us eventually, but there will be other threats. There will be other things. I try to remind myself, to enjoy life as best I can while I'm here. And I know that it's hard. It's hard at times. I find joy in spending time with people in my neighborhood, in my community, and working on things, you know, to make people's lives better. But that's me. You know, it's you have to find what brings you joy, and there's no right or wrong answer, so long as you're not hurting other people. So that's all I will say for now. Thank you for watching the film. And you know, many of the fights, all of the fights that were featured in the film continue. They continue to this day. And there's a saying in our community, "La lucha sigue." The struggle continues. And then regardless of who you are, where you live, and what background you come from, you know, there is always struggle in life. And that should not bring you, you know, fear or longing or any of that. It's part of life. It's part of life. Um, and yeah, we'll always be fighting. We're in the shadow world, as Casey said. And love you all. Thank you. Peace.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for those words. Thank you, Casey. And sorry that we couldn't hear your last sentences. Yeah, thank you all for watching our film. We appreciate you sticking with us the past 2 hours. And that's and the next time we organize an event, if you guys want to join, it will be smooth and easy. And you know, like just to follow what Brian said, fighting, yeah, I mean, you know, that's through struggles that we grow as human beings, you know. I mean, I like, you know, being on a beach and take it easy, but it doesn't teach me much, you know. So it was through this experience, this travel of traveling across the continent and meet impacted communities, face my own pollution within, face my own privileges, that I understood that the outside world is a reflection of the inside toxicity that we all carry, and I mean all of us. It's not just because we have a very strong ego, so we make the ego work to say that we are beyond ego, that we still are not led by ego. And I think we all share that, and that's a beautiful thing. It's not something that we should be ashamed of, but that's something that we can communicate about, you know. When we struggle, when we fight against abuse, against pollution, against distraction, we shouldn't forget that we are part of the problem, so that we don't fall into the trap of thinking that we are not being affected as well inside. And I think it's wonderful that Ali, you're doing this work, and that's wonderful that you're all here, you know, members of the interfaith community, because I think we all need to listen closely to indigenous spirituality, because they remind us that we are too much led by our ego, even though we disagree or we don't want to see that. And interconnectedness, the realization that whether we want it or not, we are part of the problem, but we're as well part of the solution, and we are all share, you know, the same earth, and that's a beautiful thing to do. And yeah, so that's why I've been so grateful for Casey and Brian and other indigenous people that took the time to speak to us, not because they have made me someone better, you know, always that's ego. I want to become better. I want to be more performant. I want to be more free, you know, but to the contrary, you know, we just have to accept who we are because we are enough. And by accepting that, we rediscover that we are all interconnected in our inner struggles, so that, you know, we can move forward positively. That's not much what I'm saying, but that's what I have to say for closing this discussion. And thanks again, people. I really appreciate you being here. And you will all be invited in the next screening so that maybe you can have like a seamless experience. Sorry again about the struggle with technology.
Casey.
And Ali, again, thank you so much. You have been such an amazing support. It's been 5 years. So we met 5 or 6 years ago, and you've always been like amazing. Have been always an amazing support. You've been playing the role of producer executive as well. So you helped us not only, you know, with connecting us to different groups and people, but you helped us financially. And we will always be very grateful for that. Thank you.
And I wanted to quickly share the story of how I connected to Clement, and the film was through Bryan. Bryan was leading a workshop for us at a UU Young Adult conference in Houston, and Clement and his wife Sophie just came. I had no idea they were coming, and so it was like, can we film you all? And we were like, I guess, you know. And who are you again? Why are there 2 Europeans filming our workshop at a UU Young Adult retreat? And it was really just such serendipity to meet you. And I met Bryan through the Keystone Struggle back in 2012 here in Texas. So it's amazing the way the work evolves over time, and these relationships evolve over time. But I feel very, very blessed to connect with you. And Casey, do you have any final words to share? We can see you.
Don't ask. Don't ask. I always have lots of words, but I just want to say thank you. So.